Alright, well, we're continuing the build up to the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship, and I'm doing a little bit of a tour of Kerry, and it's landed me in Killarney this evening ahead of the All-Ireland final this weekend with two men who are very well known to, I guess, people tuning into the radio in Kerry down in this county. Ambrose O'Donovan, former Kerry footballer, and of course the broadcaster Tim Moynihan as well. Lads, how are things?
Good evening, Shane. Welcome to Kerry.
I'm glad to be here. The weather welcomed me as well, I have to say, this morning. Bit of excitement, I'd imagine, this week of all weeks.
It is. In the last couple of days, in particular, it kind of the atmosphere is changing. People are looking forward to the match, and we're all picking our own teams. We're all going looking at matchups and everything else. But yeah, a little bit of excitement. I thought there'd be more colour, particularly from this town. There's a lot of flags not out or anything else like that. So, but I suppose it will come from today on. I suppose they will get excited. We're slow enough that way, I suppose, and being a tourist town or whatnot, it's busy at the moment. You've seen it yourself. So yeah, I think from tonight on it'll pick up now, and we'll be talking about the match. The one thing I will say to you is that there's no train ticket to be had.
Right.
They're all booked out solid. Buses are booked out as well. So there's a good crowd going up, and a lot of people talking. Believe it or not, while we're all looking forward to the match, it's getting more and more expensive, and it is becoming a factor with Kerry supporters. And people like saying, "Oh, there was a bad Kerry crowd up." It's not easy to have kind of money for it. Tickets are, we'll say, nearly 100 quid, 90 quid a spot. And I mean, you've got to get a train, or if you're driving up, or if you have a family with you, it's an expensive day out. It's the first time I've seen people talking about the expense factor. We all know it's love to see Dublin and Kerry, but it is becoming very, very expensive for families in particular to go to these matches.
Yeah, the hotels in Dublin in particular are fairly scandalously priced. You two lads are becoming there's the phone going. That's someone, you know what that is? Someone looking for tickets, or else a train ticket, I'd imagine.
It is, of course.
The usual. It's not Jack O'Connor ringing with a few tactics. You two lads have become a bit of a cult figures. Is that fair to say? Or definitely a double act in a good way now in broadcasting. The Ant and Dec of Kerry broadcasting, and I mean that in a positive sense. So, how has this relationship on air blossomed, Tim?
He just there. He cued me nicely. He said about money and the cost of it. You're always guaranteed money if you're traveling with Ambrose. So that has helped the cause as well. And any man smiling all the time. Look, it's gone on with a number of years now. Some great characters and great broadcasters and Radio Kerry use. Wishy Fogarty and Liam Higgins, great men, and Ambrose, I think one of his first games he did was with the late great Liam Higgins, and following that you had Gary O'Sullivan in South Kerry, and Ger O'Connor was there as well. So we're very fortunate, I suppose. You mightn't say it, but we're good old friends at the back of it. But and down here, and we did an article for a paper, and they were saying, we're very biased, but I suppose when Kerry are playing, we can be, but I suppose we look at nothing is planned. I see you there, Shane. You've got more notes than we normally carry along, and normally I'm the guy setting up the sound equipment when we go on Crow Park on Sunday, and Ambrose will come in and say, "Where's the programme?" So we take it away from there. But I suppose we look. Ambrose has played the game at the highest level. He former Kerry captain, of course, captain in 1984, and I suppose we look at it nowadays as supporters, and we. No better man and the man here beside me, and if Kerry are not playing in a certain way, we can be very critical of them as well, because there's an expectation there. But I suppose we treat everything, we kick every ball with him, Shane, and that comes across in commentaries, and the power of these cameras, even the one you have here today, it just sends things out. But what you see here is what you get, and I suppose that normally works for us,
The problem with my notes is I can't read them, so I write them down, and then I can't understand what I've written down. But sure, look, we get there in the end. I guess these weeks, Ambrose, bring up memories for yourself of All Ireland build-ups, not least when it's Dublin as well. But 84 in particular, I mean, I think you must have been one of the youngest captains of an All Ireland winning team for sure, because you were only maybe 22 in that panel.
Yeah.
That's mad, isn't it? Like, that must have been. Well, I guess it's a quick way to grow up fast, isn't it?
Exactly, that's one way of putting it. Well, I was lucky enough that I was on the panel in 83. And I'd been a spectator and a supporter in 82 when we lost the 5 in a row. I was a sub in 83 when we were caught again with a last minute Tadhg Murphy goal above in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And kind of that set the scene for me then in 84. And I remember having a meeting with Mick very early in the time, and he said, it's kind of make your mind up time. Mm-hmm. He kind of was questioning my attitude, and I suppose at the time, being the age I was, I might miss an odd night training if there was a disco or something on, or a party on. Not that I'd be a big man to go to those things, but on occasion that time I would be.
Yeah.
So he kind of said, you've got to make up your mind now, you've got to go to the social side of the game, or you want to get serious about it and get on the team. He said, you're good enough to make the team, and he went on with this thing. But he said, we've got to train hard and showing after the dedication, a lot more dedication that I was showing. So I took it from there, and I kind of, the one thing I'll always say to people, and I've said it, we trained very hard, but after 8 or 9 weeks of really hard training, the training became easy and it became fun. When you get to such a level of fitness, you enjoy the training, the games, and you know yourself you can do more and you can push yourself that bit harder. And I enjoyed it, but to come onto the team first and to get on the team, I remember I was walking down the road here, down St. Anne's Road, going to work, and there was an old man meeting me, and he was a Crokes man, and he wouldn't be the biggest fan I ever had, I'd say anyway, but he says to me, the old team wasn't named at all, was it? I said, it was, actually. Who's on it? I says, I don't know. I said, that's a pick. He knew for a midfield. I don't know his name. I said, but I can tell you. I said, there's supposed to be changes in the team anyway. That'll be the same midfield. He says, it'll be Jacko and Shawnee Welch or Shane Connor. He said, sure. You've no hope, really, sure, he said. And I kept walking. I said, you're dead right. I probably have no hope. The next morning, I was coming down. He was looking out the gate, peeping, and I got, excuse me, I made it. And he shot in the gate. I didn't see him for about 4 weeks after that. So, things like that. But yeah, it was interesting. It was a great eye-opener for me, so young, I suppose, and you had to grow up fast. But I will say that the boys I had around me that time were brilliant. They know the way they come into the team, they'd make a better player of you. If they saw weaknesses in you, they'd say, look, you want to work at that. You want to get Paddy Shane, God rest his soul, Tommy Doyle, Shawnee Walsh, Bomber. These are all great fellas to have around you, because they'd see weaknesses on these fellas. Were my heroes. I was looking at these fellas in '78 when I was a Kerry minor, watching him play, and they welcomed me into the team and they made me feel part of it. And as the fella says, the rest is history.
It's funny, that story, Tim, reminds me of I think it was Ambrose's words before, talking about how it was maybe after a match, no two Kerry people will agree on the match the same way, and it probably is the same in the build-up. There's a lot of disagreement in terms of what the team should be, what the tactics should be, but that's the beauty of it, I suppose, isn't it? Like, the two of you do a brilliant job at it, in that you paint a picture, and I think you'd said that as well, Ambrose, yourself, that no flowery words, it's really just painting a picture of what happens in the match.
Yeah, it's simple language, and I'd be going with Ambrose in the car, and we don't agree on a lot of things. When he'd want to turn left, I might go straight on, and I suppose that there's parallels with Gaelic football as well, and Ambrose is his own view, I suppose. Vintage wise, I suppose we'd be described as dinosaurs. So there's a certain belief. There's a certain belief in Gaelic football, the way it's played, the Kerry way. But if we can move it on, and we talk about where blanket defences nowadays, I think a huge thing, and people are probably missing out on it, and all the build up to the All Ireland, is Jack O'Connor travelled. Jack O'Connor, we're always looking for a manager that's in Kerry, grew up the Kerry way, and we don't like abandoning that. But his time in Kildare, I think that's a huge asset, because he made connections with up north, Paddy Talley coming down. So the one thing, and Ambrose said, no, well, if Jack O'Connor can do it himself, he'll go off and get somebody else to do it. Yeah. And that's very much, I think that the whole mould of Kerry now, that's part of it, that this scientific approach is matched with what Ambrose, in Ambrose's era, the serious footballers, teams that's after doing the 4 in a row, missing out again to Offaly in 82, and Cork in the 83 Munster final, and then to come back and win 84, 85, 86, bringing players like Ambrose in, Timmy Dowd was there, wasn't he? John Kennedy. So added to guys that we saw, I think there was a substitute bench there at one stage by Kerry. You'd guys on with 3 or 4 and with 24 medals. Yeah. So that's what you had to Kerry. But as Ambrose will tell you in games, and I'm sure you'll delve deeper into the Kerry game on Sundays, that Kerry fellas, and Ambrose was no different, that if you were going out and you're wearing I've heard it a lot from Ambrose's era, that if a Kerry guy goes out, he thinks and he knows that he's better than you today. Yeah. So we always had that advantage in teams, to be like Dr. Croke's dominance here in Kerry. They always had 4 or 5 points of an advantage because the fear that's in, and that was with the Kerry way. We lost it maybe in the last decade, but I think it's coming back again, and coming back quite swiftly,
Yeah, and it's almost that last decade, that attitude when you see the sky blue Dublin jersey against you in Croke Park in the 80s, like the Dublin lads must have hated seeing Kerry coming. I mean, that green and gold jersey must have been, because you think of someone like Brian Mullins, for example, and I think I was saying it during the week, it's the first All Ireland since Brian passed away, but he must have had nightmares of those Kerry lads, because I think, was it 74, 78, 79, 84, 85, he loses 5 All-Irelands to
That's right.
the same county, which is so. I mean, back then you had a complete utter dominance over this fixture.
Well, we had, but again, there was a fierce respect from by Kerry for the Dublin side, and vice versa for Dublin to the Kerry side. Both sides had fierce respect, and we always were afraid of what each other could throw at us. There was always some little bit of a thing going to be put in, some little different part to our play, some player put into the corner forward, give him a roving role. I mean, Dublin tried to do it with us with John Kerns, that I always played John Kerns, it was Kevin Heffernan, God rest him, played John Kerns inside corner forward and brought him out as a third midfielder. But what do I like? What do I say to Ger Lynch? He says, well, that's automatic. He says, Mick, you'll stay inside. Ger Lynch, you pick up John Kerns. And he said to Ger, and he said, that should be no problem, Ger, you're a midfielder for Valencia anyway. So that's that part of that done, he says. So I'll let that done, don't worry us anymore. Yeah. John Kerns was this great, and he was doing very well for Dublin. We'd a talk about it. That's one sentence he said. Ger Lynch, you'll pick up John Kerns if he comes to midfield. Mick, you pick up Ger Lynch's man. And it's that simple, he said, and we'll go with that. But Dwyer was like, we've often spoken with 17 about it. Dwyer didn't pick teams to play other teams. Dwyer had a belief, and he instilled in us, we were going to play our way, and we weren't going to be worried about the opposition. If they had a tactic, like I said, about bringing John Kerns to midfield, Ger Lynch, you pick up John Kerns, that's it. There was no more about it, it was one sentence. There was no, you weren't going to be looking at the video or anything else. That was the way it went. He wanted the ball going into Bomber, Sheehy, Powry. He wanted to play a set way, and he said, we inflict our games on people, not vice versa. We don't go to line out, we go to play our own game, and we're going to do that all the time.
Shane, that's quite funny actually, that when Ambrose said they were not funny, in the sense going back in 1969, John O'Keefe came out of St. Brendan's as 18, 19-year-old, and straight into midfield. I'm not sure I could stand corrected in this, but I think it was Meath they were playing, but he came on at midfield with Mick O'Connell, who was a huge impact, of course, in the 50s and the 60s, one of the greatest players of all time in Kerry. And Jono was this nervous young fella, same height as Ambrose, coming out in the middle of the field. He was asking Micko, it was the first league game, and he said, Micko, who'll I pick up? And he said, listen here to me, Garson, we don't pick up anybody, they pick us up. So it'd tell you that was the Kerry way. That's the attitude.
It's funny. It feels like the Kerry team last year had a similar attitude, and there is that swagger of an All-Ireland champion this year, albeit that the Mayo game was a disappointing step backwards, but it didn't really impact the season as such. Who are favourites heading into this weekend? Because I can't.
Dublin are hot favourites.
Here we go now. Here we go.
Dublin would be favourites. Yeah.
Heavy favourites.
They have everything. Look, the population,
7 or 8 points. You're just
the monetary side of things.
Well, they're big men as well, so they'd be heavier favourites.
They're taller. They have everything going. Look at their bench. They're seriously.
The size of Brian Fenton and James McCaffrey. I mean, they're bound to be a heavier bet than us.
There's people telling us, Shane, that we won't keep the ball kicked out to them. So look, we'll always turn up to fixture. We'll never turn down. So if you ask us who's favourites, Dublin are sweet hot favourites.
But it should be a right good game of football, though. There won't be much in it.
Yeah.
No.
It's set up unbelievably well, and in all respect to Monaghan and Derry, and I'm a Monaghan man myself, but all the neutrals certainly wanted this final. This is the final that people would have been licking their lips over. Do people have maybe a short-term memory when it comes to Kerry? Because all of a sudden people are pointing at the strength of the Dublin panel, Cluxton coming back in, Pat Gilroy coming in as the Mayor Ishka. Are people forgetting maybe the Kerry are All-Ireland champions?
I think you're spot on, and that's very true for you. Now, look, I've the greatest of admiration and respect for Steve Cluxton, but if I'm a young Dublin goalkeeper in Dublin, and I'm playing under 17s, or I'm playing with under 20 team, or if I was like Evan Comerford, with all due respect, Stephen's on the wrong side of 40. It's not saying a lot to the young fellas coming on after me. So what this smacks to me of one, desperation. We're trying to win this one at all costs. And it doesn't matter what way we do it. Pat Gillow was involved before, very good at management, that's fine. But for me, Cluxton going, he's a good goalkeeper and his kick-outs are good. But I mean, to me, it's sending out an awful message. I wouldn't like to see it happening in Kerry. I would not like to see him on 41 years of age, coming to goals and all the young fellas coming up after him saying, because Stephen will be gone after this year. So it looks to me like that they're putting all the eggs into one basket. They're going for glory. We're going to have one last cut. This is one last hurrah. They've been fantastic All-Ireland champions. They've won eight All-Irelands, and this is they said there's one more in us. That's what this smacks of to me, and I think this is one. And that's why I think Kerry are aware of this fact as well. This is Dublin saying we're going to have a cut at this one and forget about next year.
Is that what it is, Tim, as well? Like, I was chatting to Darryl Kinage earlier, and he was talking about the fact that the egos in Kerry are maybe a little bit bruised because of the Dublin 6 in a row, and they started to do things that only Kerry had maybe done before. And even if you look at this weekend, you've Cluxton, Fitzsimons, and James McCarthy going for a 9th All-Ireland senior medal, which is an unbelievable achievement if they manage to do it. But is that a part of it? Is there maybe a bruising of the ego in the last decade or so in Kerry because of that 6 in a row, maybe?
Yeah, I think the one that hurt most, and Ambrose would be no different when we were going for our own 5 in a row in 1982 and come to Offaly that time, and an Offaly team that was knocking on the door in the period. I think that going for stopping Dublin for that 5 in a row, it really hurt Kerry. And obviously we had the pandemic after that, and things happened and if you look at it, 2019 and that drawn game, it's a game we could have won. And we have that debate, Ambrose and myself in the car. If Tommy Walsh came on earlier, he was the one player that Kerry or that Dublin couldn't handle. Maybe pound for pound they were better than us right through the field, but they couldn't handle Tommy Walsh. So there is hurt, there's always hurt, but as Ambrose said earlier, there's respect. But if you look at the other side of things, I think I was down in Thurles in a league game, commentating with Ambrose, and we were saying, and Paddy Andrews actually was beside us the same day, and we were looking at the way they set up Dublin. They'd go down underneath the Cusick stand on Sunday, and if nothing's happening down there, they come out to the 45, then they'll go down to the Hogan. They might try the Cusick again, but that's coming from Jim Gavin and not Dizzy Farrell, that they feel that if you go down an area, you think the cornerback, I've done my job. They feel that someone's going to lose concentration, pop the ball in the pocket, but Kerry play that way now.
Yeah,
we did it in the last game against Derry. We tried different channels, but when somebody loses concentration, we go into the pocket and we pop it. So there are similarities when Dublin were on top to the way we play now. But as Ambrose will tell you, on any given day, at the end of the day, it's football. It's the guys that kick the ball over the bar, win games, and both sides are quite capable of that. But and it's about legs in that last 10 minutes. And I thought, Ambrose, and you probably agree,
off the bench
coming off the bench is huge.
What's coming out for both sides, because this is going to be a 20-man game. And I know it's a cliche, but it's down to what comes off the bench and the impact they'll have in the game. Because I figure up to the last 20 minutes there'll be very little in this. So that's what's going to come off the bench is going to flick this game one way or the other. Dublin are very strong coming off the bench. They're good footballers coming off the bench. Now, we don't know what the Kerry team is yet. It'll be named later on tonight. But I mean, at the moment we have the likes of Brina Bugli, Stephen O'Brien, they're brilliant coming off the bench. You would have, we've lost Tony Braston, who will be a loss. But the one plus factor for that is that Killian O'Spillane is fit again now. And he should be, this is a game that might suit Killian with 20 minutes to go to spring him on the bench. Yeah. But I think like Dublin, Jack McCaffrey coming off the bench, Kilkenny coming off the bench.
Not bad.
This is bad. And Bugler, if he starts not, he's going to be coming off the bench, or else Niall Scully, either are. Strong, big boys.
I don't know, will we bother going up at all? Shane
just coming off the bench.
A man that we probably haven't spoken about, and Ambrose and I, we speak a lot because they're the men in charge in the middle, the refereeing job. It's very important to me. And Ambrose played with some great footballers. He was there with Mikey Sheehy and Maurice Fitzy. Likewise, the Gooch came after that. But we're probably looking at the greatest footballer of all time. And let's be honest. He's only, 23, 20. But he needs the protection of the ref. He needs the protection of umpires. Because there's an old saying down here in Kerry is that if you were playing a club game, and it's always said when you were playing Guinea Gwilla, don't let their best man beat you. Centre field, you don't let Ambrose O'Donovan beat you. You don't beat the Gooch. So you're going to be targeted, and it's a big man's game, but it's very important that he gets protection. And I mean that. And no different to any good footballer.
But fair play as well. You don't put it in a glass case and foam around it.
Yeah.
He can take it and give it. But don't go to cynical stuff. And I will double tag him. And if I was Kerry and David Cliff's playing for Dublin, I'd be telling my defence to double tag him and let him know about his own crop art and hit him an odd thump. Of course you would. Yeah. And that's natural, and that'll be done to him. But they keep the cynical stuff out of it. But the referee needs to be able to stop this as well. So there's a place called stop as well. That's where I felt we had a chat with Sean Hurston. A longer chat than we should have had.
Went into the early hours.
Into the very early hours in Clare Morris of all places. It was after the Kerry Mayo game, and Sean happened to be refereeing the Kerry Mayo game the same night, and we got stuck into him. And I got stuck into him about David Clifford. And I said, did you feel, I says, in the All-Ireland final against Galway that you gave David Clifford proper protection? No, there was a few points involved. Let's get this thing straight now first. It wasn't off the cup straight away. I kind of eased him into it. And he looks at me and he says, I know what you're talking about, he says. But I'll tell you something, one, about David Clifford. He says, I give him the break on occasion as well. Believe me, he says, David Clifford is well able to look after himself. He can give as good as he gets. And I thought it was a great answer for what I was saying. So, I mean, we know that David Clifford is no angel either. But like, just let common sense prevail. What you don't want is to see some fella and the game being stifled, because I think this has the makings of a cracking game of football. If we play, and because both sides can play open football, and both sides have great footballers that can play that game. I'd love to see the foot pass. I love coming back, like Timmy said, we're all dinosaurs. I love to see the 60-yard pass going up the field, and 3 kicks of a ball, and we go from one end of the field to the other and bang over the bar. 3-touch football. I love to see that. It's not going to happen all the time, but let it happen a few times, and that would make my All-Ireland final for me.
There's nothing wrong with dinosaurs, by the way. People love Jurassic Park. It has to be said.
Shane and Ambrose mentioned it there, and he with a good pass, Ambrose, 25, 30, 40 yards, you'll take 2 or 3 players out of the play, and you'll get that from both sides the next time. But everyone's on about a classic. Kerry are going to be cagey, and Dublin are, but you will see phases of the game where there'll be something really good scores and good passing. So it depends where the game, but it's about every game now is about that last 10, 15 minutes. Most games now, 76, 77 minutes, was 76 minutes when Sean O'Shea kicked that point in the All-Ireland semi-final. So you want to know where you are in a different scenario. A black card, a yellow card, 2 yellows, and bye-bye. So I suppose training tonight, every team are going to prepare for different scenarios. And it's game management. And like Ambrose said, you can have the best manager or management team in the world, but the boys inside the white lines, you have to think like footballers. And you'd hope that, we hope it's in the Kerry way, but like I say, Dublin are sheer
both teams think that way. Both teams are football teams.
Yeah.
They're football first. Now, they may have had different tactics and put players behind the ball, but the ethos of both teams is to play football as much as they can. And the fact that there's 2 teams in it, it should be a good game of football.
And by the way, I know he's going to be watching this as well. Like, as Amber said, Sean Hurston is one of the top two refs in the country at the minute. So he's
and I still owe you a point, Sean, from that night in Killarney, but you're still the best referee, and I will pay you back the point. You'll meet in Killarney sometime. You'll brought on for a game, and I look after you. I'll pay you back the point that you paid for that night above.
There's the pint sorted. Love it, absolutely love it. Well, did Kerry get the credit they deserve for the Derry game? Because Derry are, as an Ulster man myself, 2-time Ulster champions in a row. It's not an easy thing for any team to achieve. Derry have a lot of credit in the bank in Ulster, and they play a style of football some people enjoy, some people don't. But like, even Derry 3 points up at half time, I think it was, and they were really stamping their authority on the game. But the way in which Kerry came back into it, and look, 10 minutes left, Kerry's place in the championship looked at serious risk. So I wonder, did they get the credit they deserve for that performance?
We were, and I know Amber's going to take it from there. We were queering why we're in Kerry pushing up early, and this is something we look for. That I don't like the idea of Oran Lynch having the freedom of the park, and he came in the second half. He got inside our 45, and he pinged the pass into the corner of the D. That shouldn't be happening. We pin him back, but I would say, and Ambrose, I don't know if he'll agree. He doesn't agree with me all the time, but I thought Kerry adjusted well. Because Kerry were preparing for, from what I'm hearing in training, we don't hear a lot about their training. They had 15 behind the ball teams they were playing, and they thought that Derry would go defensive. So straight away, Derry came out and they attacked. That goal was after in the first couple of minutes, and Kerry had to adjust. So they suck up a lot of pressure, and then I thought they were, getting more into it. Ambrose, would you agree?
Just one game, and this is dead honest truth. I agreed with Tomas O'Shea what he said. He said, look, the better team lost. We were pox lucky in that, number one, Derry had 4 or 5 very, very bad misses. No, they should have backed themselves. Yeah. But it's the one thing that if Derry had a weakness that day was that had 6 forwards that backed themselves. The only one that backed himself was Wigan. Yeah. They had forwards with scoring chances, and they didn't take it. They took the extra pass, and when they took the shot, then it was hit with more in hope than positivity or anything like that. Then, you can remember Tony Roston came on, he kicked the ball into the goalie's hands. It was a miss kick, if you like, by Tony, and Derry came down the field. It was a brilliant save by Shane Ryan. If that went into the net, now that was it. I think that's, to me, his save of the year for 2 things, because it was hit like a bullet, and he got a hand on it, and he got one hand. It wasn't two-handed. He got one hand on that. It was a strong hand to stop that going into the net. I thought it was a brilliant save by Shane Ryan, and I think if that went into the net, We would. It was, and what struck me about Derry, I enjoyed the game, by the way. I mean, as much as Kerry under the cash, but Derry, when like it was like the old Jim McGuinness with Donegal, I suppose, it wouldn't last and his predecessor in Derry. But I mean, when they attacked us, they attacked us in droves, but they attacked us with pace. And I always say that, and people are sticking me listening to the commentary. When you attack at pace, you have a defence under pressure straight away. That's where there's lateral passing over and back. Everybody's time to get in position and everything else. But you go direct, and Derry went direct at us. And they had us on the back foot, and they had us on the ropes. But then the plus side of what Tim is right, what he said, we showed great character. We kept our nerve and kept our cool. But no, then again, we had sheer brilliance from David Clifford. That was the best performance.
He's pretty good at football, apparently.
But I'll tell you, it was the best performance I've seen. I played in the few semi-finals. It was the best performance I've seen by a Kerry player in an All-Ireland semi-final, because our backs were to the wall and David Clifford had to take us out of a hole, because without David Clifford, Derry would have won comfortably.
And that's it, yeah. And Jack O'Connor did it. I did a post-match interview with him, but he was saying that David Clifford went to a level, not saying that he didn't expect it, but he went to a level where he's never seen a player. It's like he looked up at the clock and he said, what's left in it? I need to win this game. Or we need to win this game. And, you know, when we speak, and Ambrose and myself, I think we were commentating it, they call it the Junior Premier, but the standard is very high in Kerry at that level. Fossa beat Listroy on their way to the All-Ireland series, or the Munster series. But I thought it was the best game of football I ever see David Clifford. I know we've seen a lot at inter-county level and all the cameras are there, but I thought the game against Listroy, where he kicked 2-12, and it was a horrible day in Fitzgerald Stadium weather-wise, but he kicked a 6 point from underneath the terrace side, and the ball just left, right and over the black. All I'm saying is he grasped that game in the same way as he did the game, and he's the one player, and he's the one player in the country that can actually do it. If you say a one man can change things, he can, because a lot of players in the past we've seen, they're fine if the team is level or maybe 4 or 5 points up, but this fella can do it when we're 4 or 5 points down, and that's how special he is.
Well, he had to do it,
and he had to do it. Yeah. But there's players that had to do it in the past, Ambrose, but they couldn't do it. But he's quite capable. And that's something that we look at. We're so fortunate. He could have been born in Dublin as well, Shane. We'd be in right trouble, because his late mum and dad, I think they worked in Dublin.
The Department of Justice. Yeah.
And the department, but he's something special.
And to raise to the standard that he is, I mean, they lost their mum this year.
Yeah.
No, she was a fierce GA woman. Great woman. She was former secretary of the Kerry Supporters Club on him before she got married. She's steeped in GA tradition as well. I mean, you know, and for them, like, that was a huge loss. That woman, you know, she made a fierce battle for life. She wanted to cling to life. She saw her sons win the All-Ireland Junior with Fossa. She saw him win an All-Ireland with Kerry. But I mean, you know, this is a woman like that, to me, like, was brilliant to them. And it's very close to the two boys. They were very close.
And the natural progress, they're still grieving.
Of course.
And we must, and we take a lot for granted, but they're young men, and that was probably the first major loss, you know, in their life. So, and let's hope that the next one be a way down the line. But I'm only just saying, and they're still like to be able to go out in the Munster final that weekend and put on a performance. And that's something that I liked about Kerry this year. That, you know, I think it was the best thing in the world that happened when we were beaten by Mayo, and probably the worst thing in the world that happened Mayo when we were beaten by Mayo and Killarney. But anything, and Marmus has been to all those games with me. We went out, we had played Clare under emotional circumstances, just blew them away. The pressure, then they were saying Louth taking Mayo to point, and likewise Cork, making it very difficult. So they went out and they put them away. We were asked then about Tyrone, all about the physicality, the intensity, everything that happened to us in the pandemic when we played them, and the COVID card was played. We went out and we put them away with ruthlessness. So I'm saying, my point is, I think anything that was asked of Kerry this year, they gave it. But look, Sunday is going to be a different game.
And the Mayo game as well, people dwell in the Mayo game, and they actually, in an indirect way, they taught us they were training through.
Yeah.
That they were 5 weeks behind, and people just, you know, it went in one year, not the other. But if you just think about it now in hindsight, they had been late coming back to training. They had enjoyed their year as All-Ireland champions. They had a fantastic team trip. So they were lacking that little bit. And they trained through the Mayo game. And speaking to them after, the players, none of them were overly worried about the result of the Mayo game. They felt they were tired. And they were in a place and that they believed from the backroom team that, look, we need at least another 3 or 4 weeks of this hard training to get us up to the level of those Mayo boys and of the Dublins and all the rest of it. And they believed and they bought into it. And fair play to the, Jack will get great credit and everything else, and rightly so all the players. But our backroom staff, our fitness and conditioning, and all those boys have done a great job as well, because you could see game by game by game they got better and better and better. I thought against Tyrone, first day I saw them really match fit. They were match sharp, and they had to be match sharp against Derry. Fitness didn't count against Derry either. It didn't cost us. We were as fit as Derry. So from that point of view, I think, Jack is doing a great job with managing if that's, but we have a good backroom staff. You relate to it earlier, Timmy, about the boys he has, the backroom staff he has got in, and it is making a difference.
There's one thing Darragh Kennedy just said to me earlier. We can talk back and forth about matchups and how they're going to mark Clifford and all the rest. At 3:30 on Sunday, the ball's going to be thrown in, and none of the talk will matter. So before we finish, lads, I'm going to have to get predictions from you both. How you see the game going, maybe a margin of victory either way. So maybe Tim, start with yourself. Is it heart or head, or how are you feeling?
Yeah, look, the heart is always going to say Kerry. That's what, we wear the sleeve. The utmost respect for Dublin. They've been favourites. And I mean that, things that, like Ambrose mentioned, the bench is serious, but there's different similarities. We haven't similarities as far as last year was concerned. In the first round of the McGrath Cup, Jack put out the strongest team possible. We ran through. I think we only conceded 1 goal in the whole season. This time we scored, conceded a number of against Mayo. So, it was that kind of season. But it was all about he threw back in the players. Jack, have you the hunger to put a back to back? And I think that hunger is seriously there. And if it's an if word, the ruthlessness needs to be there that we had against Tyrone. And we mentioned about Derry, as Amber said, did the better team lose? I think the answer to that question was going to be answered on Sunday, because did they get to a certain stage of the game? They said, we're going to pull away here. And look, margin's going to be very tight and what have you, but I'd hope that, for 50 minutes that this will be nip and tuck between the two sides. And I would hope young legs. It's very hard. I know fellas going for 9 All-Ireland medals. That's a difficult thing as well if you're depending on, you mentioned Stephen Cluxton. The one thing, Stephen Cluxton won't be coming out to the 45 the next day, Ambrose. No. So that's good. I feel that there'll be always 2 inside forwards playing, and it's going to be dangerous. You won't see Cluxton coming out if they have Clifford inside the edge of the square and everybody leaves him. I'd be hoping. I'd settle for a point, and I hope it'll be a point. And I think we're playing for something more than the pride of Kerry football. We're playing for probably one of the best footballers of all time. That him and his brother and his family had a very tough year, and I think all the players have rallied behind that. And I think that want and that need and that hunger will get Kerry over the line.
That's a good point, isn't it, Ambrose, as well? That the back to back is an illustrious thing to do. I don't think Kerry have done it since 06, 07 was maybe the last back to back.
84, 85.
And of course that time as well.
That's the last time we done it, I think. Back to back.
06, 07.
Did
we do 06, 07?
But that's still a long for a team like Kerry, it's still a long gap. Yeah. So that's another, I guess, carrot in the end of the stick, Ambrose, as well. So how do you see the game going?
I'd go along with him. It's going to be nip and tuck for 50 minutes. Hopefully it's going to be good open football. What comes off the bench is going to be critical. I'd be looking for Killian's plan. If he doesn't start when he comes off the bench, I think he's always good for 2-3 points against Dublin. For me, midfield is going to be huge. Huge, because I actually do think we probably have the best footballer, near enough of all times inside in with David Clifford. But I think Dublin have one of the really, really brilliant midfielders of past and present. I think Fenton, to me, is a gem. He's a fantastic fielder. He makes Dublin tick. And what I look at, he's so animated this year. And James McCarthy, by the way, after every game, they never show that animation up to now. And then they've won the 8 or 9 All-Ireland medals. But this year of all, there's that fires in their eyes, the clenching the fist. I think we'll go to the wire. I do think that if we can break 50-50, and that's all we need to do, not 60-40, if we can break 50-50, Diarmuid O'Connor has to have the game of his life.
Yeah.
The best game so far. He's had good games. He has to have the game of his life next Sunday. And Jack Barry has to be rowing in alongside him. People saying to me, midfield doesn't matter. It does matter.
They were brilliant against Tyrone.
They were. So, they've got to repeat that, and even better, because the ante is going to be upped and upped. Now, Derry's midfield pairing were a good midfield pairing. Yeah. Conor Glass and Rogers are 2 good midfielders as well. So I'd be hoping that Dublin are as better to me they're definitely as good, if not better, than the Derry player. So we're going to have to up the ante there. We struggled there against Derry. And as a result, the scoreboard showed it as well. But I think if we can break 50-50 and the two boys having the game of their lives, Kerry, just don't write off a replay, because I think it's that close. And I'd be looking at, as I said, if our midfield can play better than what they played so far, and that's a big ask in itself. Our backs, I'd be solid enough for our backs. Our forwards, with David Clifford, he'll bring the players into it. But then I'd be saying a point for me if our midfield delivers.
Yeah. Shane, before you leave, just for yourself, we're on I suppose a regular basis we watch, and what a brilliant sports off the ball is for getting it out there, broadcasting. It looks divisive up there. That I see that the likes of yourself and Joe Gilroyd be pro Kerry. Is it very divisive from contributors, stroke other presenters? Then that it's a real Dublin 4 job, is it?
There can be, definitely. Now there's no whisper in the air. There's no definite message from above as to who we have to be.
What's his name again? Was he there with Meath? We can't think of his.
We think his name.
You're thinking of Anthony Miles, I think.
That's the man we're thinking of course.
Anthony, you reckon we were blowing hot and cold? And I, hopefully, in the commentary, if it'll go our way the next day, rather than saying, what do you think of that, Joe Brawley? What do you think of that, Anthony Miles?
Well, from a Kerry perspective, hopefully that's what you are saying at the end of the full-time whistle.
Yeah. Anthony won't see us at all. If Dublin will win, you want to hear from us.
Down the M50.
Straight down the road, flags down, the whole lot. Well, listen, people can obviously there'll be updates on Off the Ball across the game, but if you want as well, the lads will be given their usual colourful commentary on Radio Kerry if you want to tune in to Ambrose O'Donovan and Tim Moynihan on Radio Kerry. So lads, brilliant chatting with you down in Killarney. I've enjoyed my time up down here so far. I'm going to have a couple of pints in the town tonight and really soak up the pre-All-Ireland atmosphere. So thanks a million to you both.
Great stuff.
You're
Thanks a
more than
million,
welcome.
Shane.
Thank you.
Thanks,